Hello, and welcome to the Argyle HR Technology Leadership Forum. My name is Eric Wallace with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our esteemed speaker. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. To ask questions during the session, simply type into the Q&A chat and we'll address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce our speaker. Today we have Julie Devlin, Senior Partner, HCM Advisory at UKG. We are excited to have Julie with us for a presentation called HR's Hidden Story, The Power of Data. Welcome, Julie. Over to you.
Data, however you say it. But the proper pronunciation is data. And I know this because I looked it up in the Cambridge Dictionary. Hi, and welcome to HR's Hidden Story, The Power of Data. We want to help you here at UKG. We want to help you tell a story. We want to help you tell a story with your data. We want to help business leaders, HR leaders use that wealth of data that you have and access it to really inspire action at all levels of your organization. So I'm excited to be here with you today to talk to you about how we can do this. You know, the average American, we consume over 34 gigabytes of data every single day. And that's estimated to be the equivalent of 100,000 words heard or read every day, which is the same as a 300-page novel. So there's your first little tidbit of information. My name is Julie Devlin, and I am a senior partner in the HCM Advisory on the Human Insights team here at UKG. And in my role, I do a lot of speaking, a lot of HR consulting. I also co-host the People Purpose podcast for UKG. I'm also an adjunct professor in HR at McDaniel College. Most importantly, I spent a long time, majority of my career in human resources. I consider myself a proud HR enthusiast, a proud HR nerd. A lot of what I discuss are things that I wish I would have done different, things I wish I would have done better, or things I would have done at all as an HR practitioner. And this presentation is no exception. Data is really, really important. And I definitely underestimated the amount of impact that good data could have in my day-to-day. I'll explain all this later, but what I want to do is I'd love to start with one of my favorite quotes here. One of my favorite quotes is by the great philosopher, Willy Wonka. He says, "Time is a precious thing, never waste it." You know, I believe you can learn everything you need to know in life by watching the original Willy Wonka movie, but this is one thing that's become paramount to me in my mind as the years have rolled on. I think about the concept of time. You know, where have we been? Where are we going? But more importantly, how do we get there? And what tools can we use to give ourselves a crystal ball into the future? Not just in life, of course, but we're talking about business here. So what I urge you to do as we go through the presentation today is think about how you are spending your time at work. You know, it doesn't matter where you work, doesn't matter what industry you're in, doesn't really matter your role or the size of your organization. We all have so much to deal with, but especially in HR. Wouldn't it be great to have tools to give us the insight to save more time, to have more focus, and really to show us what's more important to prioritize? Now, this in no way is an exhaustive list, but it's a good cross-section of the information that's in and around the HR function on a daily basis. All of these metrics, when used the right way, when put in a tech system that's efficient and effective and safe, all of these metrics can add up to paint a picture of the employee lifecycle at your organization and really provide opportunities for us as HR professionals to understand not just the professional moments that matter to your people, but also the personal moments as well. And these days, when we talk about empathetic HR, we talk about empathetic leadership, this has become more and more paramount. But see, to get to where you need to be, you do need to go beyond the surface. It's not just about tracking individual metrics. It's more about combining these metrics. It's about combining them in ways that are going to look and help you to reveal new angles to your story and help you deliver the right kind of information to the right people at your organization. So what does it mean to lead with data? Well, so to lead with data, we're looking at not making decisions based on opinions and intuitions, but making decisions based on facts rather than assumptions. I mentioned we as humans, we have a lot of unconscious biases that we deal with, that we have internally we don't think about. That's why they're unconscious. So what data does is it allows organizations to really more effectively determine the cause of the problems from a numbers perspective, from a factual perspective, rather than just an emotional perspective or an assumptive perspective. So, data has to be collected, it has to be processed, it has to be transformed and analyzed to truly harness its power. It can help us to see performance. When we think about data and we think about how data can be used and is used in everyday life, we think about sports teams and how often now we hear them talking about using data analytics to make decisions and all of that, right? There's not a professional sports teams today that doesn't employ a team of data collectors and analysts to help support and improve play on the field. Well, we can think of it like that in the workplace as well. We can think about, always updating the data and doing what needs to be done based on what the facts show. And when we do this, what we're able to do is we're able to then say to the people who question us, this is why we made the decision. This is why this occurred. So questions to ask: where is the data at your organization stored? That could have lots of different answers. Who has access to the data at your company? Are important decisions being made using data at your organization? More importantly, are they being made using the right kinds of data, and is that data trusted? Are your data collection processes, are they efficient? Are they effective? And can you trust your data? Human error, when we talk about manual processes, human error is a huge problem. And what data can do is it can help to avoid some of those errors, because what happens when data is utilized, your organization becomes more trustworthy. And we all know the importance of trust at organizations. UKG, our research arm, the Workforce Institute, did a study on trust at work, and trust is paramount. We found that 64% of folks said that trusting work environment leads to a better sense of belonging. 68% of folks said that lower trust hurts daily effort, and over half of folks says lower trust affects their mental health at work. So when we think about data and how good data can breed trust, all of these things come into play. Good data plays a big role here, because employees at low trust organizations, they're often bogged down by office politics and infighting and things like that. And they're, organizations that do not promote trust, they're more likely to withhold information from employees and sort of hoard resources because they don't feel safe sharing them. So, decision making then becomes slower and it becomes less effective. When we talk about trust in general, this is from The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey. Accurate data promotes trust. When trust goes down, speed will also go down and costs are going to go up. But conversely, when trust goes up, speed will also go up and costs will go down. So a company can have an excellent strategy and they can have a strong ability to execute, but there's going to be significant impacts on productivity and costs if there's low trust. So without trust, you can't grow, and companies and profits can't grow, and data trust is important. And it means having confidence that your organization's data is healthy, and that you're ready to act on that data when you need to. We think about the time over the past several years with the disruption that we've been through in the workplace. Organizations that had access to quick data, organizations that had access to really pivot on a dime, have come out of the other side of the disruption in a better way than those organizations that did not have a good data strategy. So trust is one of the key things to making successful use of your data. This is combined with culture, it's combined with agility, and it can lead to really good organizational health. So, what this all boils down to is that the vital impact of data is that it helps to lead to the right decisions, and the right data at the right time will lead to better decisions, and those better decisions become right decisions. So, data-driven HR. So we're using this data to inform decisions about all aspects of HR, from recruiting to hiring to compensation to benefits, to whatever you want, whatever you want to include at your particular organization. A lot of this, what I'm speaking about, is higher level, because as I'm speaking, what I'd love for you to do is think about the things at your organization that you're looking to improve. Think about the things from a data collection perspective that you're looking to make more efficient, more effective. Are you utilizing your data? What is your why? What is your what when it comes to data? So, it's very, very important that we have these things in place in order to make sure that the data that we do have is actionable. And the way that your data becomes actionable is when we're able to show the whole picture beyond just the work. And when we say our data needs to be actionable, it means that we're presenting insights in a way that can be easily leveraged to drive business decisions. It shouldn't be difficult to explain. It should tell a story. So we need to display this data in its proper context, accurately, and also in a place where the people who need to see it can view it. And that's what I wanted to lead into today, more so regarding HR and how we can simplify data and how we can tell a story. We can be the author of our story. HR can, and you too can be the author of your company's story. So it's taking something that seems a little bit more complicated, but taking it and simplifying it from this perspective. I'm a little biased because I was an English major. So when I talk about stories, that's an easy way for me to sort of understand, these complex, more scientific concepts. I don't necessarily have an analytical mind, but the words to your story, if we're going to say words, the words to your story are already there. So let's revisit this question. Where is your data stored? Right. So if we look at all of these little, if you will, portions or words that we can drop into a funnel to create our story, is your information stored in paper files? Is it in documents, disparate systems, spreadsheets? I can't tell you how many organizations I hear that are utilizing spreadsheets upon spreadsheet upon spreadsheet. Ghost files. When I was an HR VP, I used to have managers come to me with files that I didn't even know existed. They say, "Oh yeah, I keep a file on all of my employees," and I'm just like, "Oh no, what are you doing?" So I had to fix that problem pretty quickly. Hidden files, unused systems, survey. Where is your data living? Also, if your data lives in all of these different places, how much time are you spending compiling it together? That's something else to consider too. Data entry struggle is real. There was a study done by Zapier that said 76% of respondents spent 1 to 3 hours a day simply moving data from one place to another. That's a lot of time. And then when we're trying to find things, it makes it much more difficult. So when we compile our data together, we find the words to our story, then we can tell our story. And there's a simple way that we can do that. We can look at it in a less scientific way and more of a storytelling way. So look at our data, the data at our organization, like a story. So we have our characters. These could be employees, internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, among others. You have your conflict of the story. This could be plentiful. Business challenges, external impacts, issues employees are facing. And then finally, and what we're trying to work toward is our resolution to the story, the ending of the story. Using data to tell HR story can lead to resolutions of the conflicts, which really might get in the way of organizational progress. So what we need to do is we need to determine which data points are related to one another, consider those together, grouping things together, and starting to discover this narrative. So let's just briefly talk about the characters of our story and who those characters could be, right? The characters could be your people, could be your employees. Obviously, that's obviously what we focus a lot on in HR. Could be your business, your competitors, the industry that you're in. So thinking about all of those characters involved will help you to really frame the important players with the data that you're trying to acquire, with the data that you're trying to show. The components to your story, there could be several components to your story. When we think about some of the things, some of the pressures that are coming down on HR today, the turnover rate, there's always issues with turnover rates at organizations. How can we get a better window into that? That's something to consider. The retention rate. How are we keeping our employees? How long are we keeping our employees? What are we doing to keep our employees? Payroll error rates, definitely something that we want to track. That becomes a headache for payroll, but also becomes a turnover problem as well and a retention problem as well, because there's studies that show that people will leave an organization with just 2 wrong paychecks. Open headcount, how long is it taking us to fill positions? How long have positions been open themselves, and how much does it cost to do that? And tax and compliance costs too. This is another component to the story that becomes more important. Now, these are not exhaustive lists. This is not something these lists are not something that are final, because you at your organization, you're going to have your own particular components to your story. You are going to be able to tell your story with the information that you gather and with the information that you have at your disposal. So when we talk about the conflicts, this is where it becomes really, really important to transform through strategic pairing, right? So there's a lot of room for error with manual processes, as we've mentioned, and these processes can create inconsistencies that impact the accuracy of your reporting. But, when we look at ways that we're collecting the data, look at ways that that data is dispersed, gathering that information, it might take hours, it might take days for you to do that. And oftentimes when people take data from manual processes or spreadsheets, they're not really sure what to do with it when they get it. I think about times where I needed to run simple reports, and this was before I had good HR tech in place. It would take me days to run a report that should have taken me a second, or it would take me days to run reports that I could have maybe even had automated. It's knowing that that there are tools available to you to help you tell your story that becomes very, very important when it comes to data, and when it comes to making sure that you're able to provide the information that you need when you need to provide it. I would miss deadlines because of it. And some of you listening today, you may be thinking of it as well, or you'd be thinking, I just don't know how I'm going to compile the data. So these are the conflicts. But what we can do is we can have a good system. We can have a good system where we can compile our data, and we can then pair data together to make sure that we're able to tell our story from more than just surface level metrics. So when we look deeper and we combine data points together, you're able to see angles to the data that really help to tell the story. And this information can then be leveraged to not only support the organization, but this information can be leveraged to help support our people too, which again is so important today when we're talking about employee engagement. I mentioned in other presentations that I do, when we talk about employee engagement, oftentimes organizations spend a lot of time assuring employee engagement rather than working to improve employee engagement. Recognizing that employee engagement is a continual process and that data is a key piece to that continual process. Trusted data that you can continue to track over time to look for trends and things like that. That's really important for HR folks to recognize. So, you can't just snap your fingers and say, my employees are engaged, so I'm done. Our job is never done from that perspective, and that's where data can help us. So when we look at something like turnover rate compared with average earnings, turnover rate compared with average earnings could show us things like the cost of turnover, the turnover timeframes, the increases in overtime based on turnover, maybe even things like pay gaps and pay inequities. Again, talking from an employee engagement perspective and a belonging perspective and an equality perspective, a lot of organizations today are really working hard to ensure that they have those things in place. So having a good data system where you're able to pair these together, run reports and show you the numbers in black and white becomes increasingly important. So that's just one example of the turnover rate and the average earnings. Another example that you can look at is open headcount and labor costs, time to hire, and profits. So when we do this, part of this powerful pairing idea here, when we do this, we can look at should we add or reduce headcount? Should we should we lighten other people's workloads, right? There may be some workloads that we need to lighten. Again, that goes to a burnout perspective, a mental health perspective. All of these things impact the bottom line. All of these things impact employee engagement. Career planning and succession planning opportunities, open headcount and labor costs, time to hire, and profits all together can help us to see this as well. So again, these are just ways that you can take your data points, combine them together, and help you to tell your story. Tax and compliance costs and DE and IMB benchmarks, this could show where compliance and equity risks might exist. It could show the impact of adding headcount for recruiting. It could show the costs and risks of maybe not focusing on DEI and B. So again, just some different ways that you can combine data to look at different aspects of your organization to tell the story. Payroll error rate and time to process adjustment and inquiries. I know my payroll folks that they would love to have this kind of insight, right? So when we look at these data points put together, we can look at the inefficient processes that might create delays. We can look at the effectiveness or ineffectiveness of time rules that might be in place at your organization, impacts on retention, satisfaction, flight risk. All of this goes back to those moments that matter for your employees. Maybe too, there might be training opportunities for managers. This is also another really, really good point that we can look at, and we can say, okay, well, the data show X, Y, and Z. So perhaps this means that we need to go through another cycle of training in order to have process improvement. Again, when you think about your organization, we need to really think about your particular challenges that you're dealing with and what data points would really help you to solve some of those challenges, or to be able to tell the story to get the tools that you need in order to solve those challenges. So again, these are just some small examples of things that you can do, but we can look at what the resolutions. When we look at the end of the story, after we pair data points together, after we have a safe and secure place to put our data there into the story, how can we then lead with data? We can provide answers quickly and accurately, and this positions HR as a strategic partner and not just as another business unit. And that's what we want to be, and that's what we want to do for organizations. We want to be that strategic partner. Can free up time for us, which I know all of you need more time, and resources for more strategic products, focused to increase productivity and profitability, while still getting a deeper understanding of your people. And then really what it can do is it can really help to inspire action across the organization. It doesn't just stop with one department. Data is for everyone. Utilizing data to tell your story is something that you can do, that you can utilize across all departments. And really getting people involved becomes critical in order to be able to tell the story completely and to be able to get the data sources that you need to input those words into your story. So every story has a good hero, right? So who are the heroes of this story? Well, the heroes of this story could be many different folks, but let's focus on a few. Let's focus on the managers, the employees, and then, of course, us as HR leaders. Managers, by using day-to-day dashboards, you can give them a quick visual display of typical operations and areas that they check on regularly. So looking at things like scheduling gaps and overtime and approval. So this is so that they can stay informed and adapt on the go, which is so important for managers. Team well-being, for example, we can give our people leaders an indication as to what's going on with their teams beyond numbers. So things like sentiment analysis, for example, this collects written feedback from employees, and it shows clear trends. So this is something that's important as well, and it gives us a really good insight into that engagement that we talked about before. Direct guidance, managers can see next steps that they need to take so they can address issues like things like flight risk, fatigue, really staying ahead of employee career paths and development, and really unlocking answers to a lot of questions that data can help to unlock those answers to. And then, of course, trust and transparency is very, very important as well. So for employees, we're giving them autonomy, and people are able to take things into their own hands, get answers, not have to go through third parties, be able to do things quickly and pivot on a dime when they need to. Providing clear career paths for them, tying performance goals, strategic business priorities, learning and development milestones, etc. Those things can help them have a clear path on how to advance. What else? One-stop shop for standards, right? So this is a place where folks can go, where they can understand what it is that you are looking for from them as an employee. Folks need to know what it is that you expect. They need to know that your expectations are in line with what they are expecting them to do. So it's important to have a one-stop shop for that. And then finally, HR leaders, of course, we can provide benchmarks for folks. We can provide, flexible exploration possibilities, and also timely insights, because it really is about time, and about saving time and about advancing the organization, and moving forward. So, every story has to have a clear conclusion as well. So when we talk about data, that is no exception. So that conclusion could take on, the face of new issues that arise in a department, or new insights into how various factors might be impacting key performance indicators, or KPIs. It might make predictions or suggest changes, right? But what's really important is that your audience leaves with a sense of why you told the story and what it all means. So in order to tell the story, to make the case, we have to be prepared. We have to use actual facts and figures. Come in with a storyline. Make sure that we have a beginning, middle, and end, that we have our characters, our conflict, our resolution. Apply the data, and then, of course, look at how it impacts the bottom line, because that's what becomes most important to organizations. That's what becomes most important to businesses from a bottom line perspective, in addition to an employee engagement perspective as well. So really presenting the right facts to the right people is what becomes important as well. So presenting the story, understanding the implications of the data, how do these different pieces fit together? That's just the first step. As a leader, as an HR leader, as a people leader, we then have to find the right ways to show the data to others in the organization. Do we do that verbally? Do we do that on a spreadsheet? Do we do that with a graph? Do we do that, in a meeting? However you do it, right? It all is going to depend on your organization. Regardless of your role or where you sit in the hierarchy, your people are only going to understand how to act on information if your story is clear. So we need to make sure that that clear story is there, and that folks know that your data that you're telling the story with is trusted. So really embracing a data-driven leadership strategy can help to really yield great results and affect the bottom line. So some things to keep in mind when presenting your data: it has to be focused. Visuals will help with clarity, of course. And the data delivery has to be timely. Old data is not going to be good. We have to make sure that we have a continuous way to keep up with our data, a continuous way to make sure that that data is fresh and that it's accurate. So that way the story becomes accurate. And really, I think what the bottom line here is that data is for everyone. Data's for you, data's for me. It really should connect both the personal aspect and the professional aspect of work as well. So we can look at the people side of things and we can look at the business side of things by utilizing data. It helps all levels of the organization to make better decisions. And better decisions are going to help employees with confidence. It's going to help the organization be more productive. It's going to help increase the bottom line. It's also going to help us as HR professionals to increase the value of HR and the information and the analytics and the stories that we're able to tell the leaders at our organization. So I just wanted to end here by talking about some actual examples that you can utilize. And we're going to provide you some more information here at the end of this webinar. That you can have some more actionable items here. But think about something like fatigue in the workplace. And let's assume that if we're talking about fatigue in the workplace and the characters that we have, our employees, the conflict might be a trend where there's unexplained absences, and the data might show this. And you can use the data then to investigate and learn that in part, it's a part of the business where maybe there's an understaffing problem. And maybe employees are working too much, maybe too many overnights, too many double shifts or something like that. So unexplained absences could be caused by fatigue due to people getting burnt out. And the resolution here would be working with the business unit to schedule better and to maybe add headcount or mix and match employees to move burdensome shift times around. So, overnights or early mornings or something like that. So, this is a great example, I think, to help employees with their well-being. There's a people story to everything. And even the things that seem most transactional can really stand out as a moment that matters for an employee. And I think ultimately that moment will also matter to your business as well. So in conclusion, these were just some tips that we wanted to provide to you. To bring together so that way you're able to sort of see what your story can tell. There's some different ways to tell your stories, but there's a lot more where that came from. And as a thank you, here is a quick scan and download to our playbook that will help give you a solid action plan. It has resources like worksheets and things like that, where you're able to really see how you're able to set up and handle your data. So I hope you were able to get a little better understanding of data and how data can be used to tell a story at your workplace. And I thank you for joining me.
Thank you again for such an incredible presentation. And thank you, everyone in the audience, for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. This officially concludes the Argyle HR Technology Leadership Forum. Thank you again for joining us today and engaging in our content. Have a great rest of your day.